Welcome back to Math Expressions with Miss Hasty. Today we are doing 6-9, lesson 6-9, and it is solving multi-step word problems. Okay, so we're going to go through these word problems, figure out what our equation should be. I'll give you the answers for the activity pages, and then I want you to do the work and make sure that you get the correct answers. Okay? All right. You're going to start on activity page 265. Today we're going to do 265 and 266. Okay, let's go right ahead. Solving multi-step word problems. Number 1, an investor purchased 150 shares of stock at $13.60 per share, sold the shares later for $11.92 per share. Calculate the profit or loss of the transaction. Either they made money or they lost money. So A says, what equation can be used to find the amount of money needed to buy the shares? Well, how much did they cost originally? So it's 150 shares times $13.60 per share. Okay, so you're going to calculate that out, do the math. And, well, actually, we're just looking at the equation right now. We're not going to solve it right now, but we will later. B, what equation can be used to find the amount of money received for selling the shares? Well, 150 shares, they sold them for $11.92. So they bought them for $13.60, sold them for $11.92 per share. Does the transaction represent a profit or a loss? Well, it's going to be a loss because they bought them for more than they sold them for. So they lost money on them. So you're going to go ahead and calculate that. What equation could be used to calculate the loss? And then you're going to solve it. So you're going to take how much they paid for them and then subtract how much they sold them for. And when you are all finished, it will be a loss of $252. Not a good investment there. You don't want to lose money. Okay, so go ahead and calculate A, calculate B, subtract, and you should get $252. Number 2, a soccer team plays 10 games each season. Last season, the team scored an average of 2.5 goals per game at its first 6 games and 3.25 goals per game in the final 4 games. How many goals were scored by the team last season? Well, there's 10 games altogether, but there was 2.5 goals scored in the first 6 games. So first you're going to calculate that. And 3.25 goals in the last 4 games. Okay. And then when you add those two together to figure out how many, I gotta put my glasses on, guys, how many goals, you should end up with 28 goals altogether. Number 3, the charge for an automobile repair was $328.50 for parts and $64 per hour for labor. The repair took 3 3/4 hours. What is the total cost? Well, you have your parts, $328.50, and you're going to add that to, it's $64 per hour and 3 3/4 hours. So again, your 3 3/4, turn that into an improper fraction, multiply it by 64, add that to your $328.50, and you should end up with, again, I would expect you would do the math to make sure you get the same answer, and then you know that you did it correctly. So $568.50. Number 4, an auditorium has 215 rows of seats with 35 seats in each row. A reservation is required to sit in the first 6 seats of the 75 rows. How many seats do not require a reservation? Well, first we're going to find out how many altogether. So there's 215 rows times 35 seats, right? Okay, and then we're going to subtract the 6 seats of 75 rows from that require a reservation. And that's going to give us our answer of how many do not require a reservation. So when you are all finished and you did all your math, you should end up with 7,075 seats. Okay? All right, let's go ahead and turn to page 266. I'm going to go to my next page here. Give you a moment to turn your pages. Let's make that big. All right, number 5. At the school bookstore, Dakota purchased a notebook for $3.75, 6 pencils for 20 cents each, and 2 pens for $1.19 each. By what amount was the cost of the pens greater than the cost of the pencils? Well, first we have to figure out how much the pens are, $1.19 times 2, and the pencils, there's 6 of them at 20 cents. And that's going to give us our difference. Okay, let's go ahead and turn the page here. That's going to give us our difference of, after you do your math, you should get $1.18. Now there's some unneeded information in here to solve our problem. That's going to be this notebook for $3.75. We don't need that because we're only talking about the pencils and the pens comparison. Okay, so unneeded information, back from 6-8. Number 6, this week an employee is scheduled to work 7.5 hours each day, Monday through Friday. Again, that's 5 days. 2 hours on Saturday morning. If the employee's goal is to work 40 hours, how many additional hours must be worked? Well, first we have to figure out how much did they work. So we're going to take that 7.5 each day, so there's 5 days, and then we're going to add the 2 hours on Saturday. So you go ahead and get your answer there after you do that math, and then you're going to take your 40 minus your answer from here, and you should end up getting 0.5 of an hour. So still another half hour to make that 40 hours. So your answer should be 0.5 or 1/2 of an hour. Okay, so do your calculation, make sure that's what you get. Ryan went shopping and purchased 2 shirts for $16 each and a pair of sneakers. That cost 2.5 times as much as a shirt. How much money did Ryan spend? Well, we know he bought 2 shirts at $16, so 2 times 16, and then he also bought a pair of sneakers that's 2.5 times as much as a shirt. So we're going to take that 2.5 times 16. That's our second equation. Okay, and when you are all finished, again, turn that 2.5 into an improper fraction so you can complete that problem. You should get $72 that he spent. Number 8, at home last night, Riza spent 35 minutes doing homework, which is 10 more minutes than Colette. Katrina worked twice as long as Colette, but 5 fewer minutes than Orvis. How long did Orvis spend doing homework last night? We kind of have to organize this information a little bit, and this is the way I like to do it. I like to use the first letter of the person's name and put down the information I do know. Let me move this over a little. Okay, so Riza spent 35 minutes. We know Riza. Colette spent 35 minus 10, okay, which is 10 more minutes than Colette, so we know that it was 10 less, right? And then Katrina worked twice as long as Colette. Well, we know Colette here, so that's 25 times 2, twice as long, so that's 50 minutes. And then it tells us that Orvis, 5 fewer minutes than Orvis. Okay, so if Orvis, Katrina is 5 fewer minutes than Orvis, so that means we're going to add that 50 plus 5, and that's going to give us Orvis. So you should get 55 minutes for Orvis. So gathering your information, all right, and putting down what you know to solve that problem. Okay, last one here, number 9. At closing time, 55 adults, 89 students are waiting in line to ride an amusement park roller coaster. The capacity of the roller coaster is 38 riders. How many trips must the roller coaster make to give all the people a line in line a ride. And how many people will be on the last trip? Okay, so we have 55 adults and we have 89 students. So you need to add those two together and then take that total divided by 38 riders for each trip. Okay? So all together, when you get your answer, it's going to be 4 trips, right? But then your remainder is how many people are going to be on the last trip. So 4 trips and then 30 people on the last trip. Okay? So to solve this equation, this is one that we used. Okay. Let's go ahead and move on to our homework and remembering. 6-9 homework. Give you a minute to get that out. Let's go through the story problems. I will not be giving you the answers for the story problems, but you can check them out at the end of the day when I post your keys for you. All right, let's go through and figure out our equations. 6-9 homework side. After a deposit of $100, a withdrawal of $125, and a deposit of $24, the balance in the savings account was $27.28. What was the balance before the deposits and the withdrawals? Okay, you should be familiar with this because we do this every week in our checkbook at school. All right, so when we're working with deposits, we know that that's adding money. When we're withdrawing, that's subtracting money. So when we have the balance at the end, we're going to do the opposite of what it said. Okay, so what do we know? We know that the balance is $27.28. Okay, and they said they did a deposit of $24, but we're going to do the opposite because we're working backwards to see what did they start with. Okay, so we're going to subtract 24, and then there was a withdrawal of $125. We're going to add that. Again, we're working backwards to see what they started with. And there was a deposit of $100. We're going to subtract that. Okay, so you start with your $27.28 minus 24, add $125, and subtract $100, and that's going to give you what did they started with. What they start with, sorry. Number 2, charge for a plumbing repair was $29.60 for parts, 1¼ hours for labor at $56 per hour, and $40 for service call. What was the total cost of the repair? So we have $29.60 in parts. Add that to, it's 1¼ hour at $56 per hour. So we need to multiply that, 1¼ times 56. And then there is another $40 service call. Okay, so go ahead and do your math there, and that's going to give you the total of what it costs for the repair. Number 3, Evie, Jose, Daryl, and Asami measured their heights. Evie's height was 2.5 centimeters greater than Jose's height. Jose's height was 3.1 centimeters greater than Daryl's height, and Daryl's height was 0.4 centimeters less than Asami's height. Evie is 162.5 centimeters tall. How tall is Asami? So we have to work with the information we have and figure it out from there. So we're going to, again, kind of like we did on number 1, we're going to work backwards. We know Evie's height. And it is 62.5. Okay, and then we're going to subtract out 2.5. Okay, which is Evie's height was 2.5 centimeters greater than Jose. So again, we're working backwards, 2.5. And then Jose's height was 3.1 centimeters greater than Daryl's height. So we're going to subtract that. And Daryl's height was 0.4 centimeters less than Asami's height. So we're going to add that. Again, working backwards, just like we did in number 1. And that's going to give you the total centimeters for Asami's height. Okay. Number 4, a school bus has 22 rows of seats. 4 students can be seated in each row. Students riding in the bus have filled 19 rows of seats. 1/2 of the remaining seats. How many seats on the bus are empty? Okay, well, what do we know? We know half of the 4 times 22 minus 19. Okay, so 22 minus 19, right? That is going to be your 3, right? So 3 times 4 is 12, and half of that. That's going to give you how many seats are empty. And number 5, Rosa is 13 years and 6 months old, and her brother Malcolm is 11 years and 6 months old. So we know that 6 months is a half a year, right? Their great-grandfather is 89 years old. How many years older is the great-grandfather than the combined ages of Rosa and Malcolm? Well, we know Grandpa is 89 years old, and you're going to combine the other two. But we're going to call it 13.5 because 13 years and 6 months, that's a half a year, right? 13 and a half and 11 and a half. Add the two together, subtract it from 89, and that is going to give you how many years older? Okay. Number 6, a riverfront business offers raft trips. The capacity of each raft is 4 people. Suppose 29 adults and 22 children would like to raft. If each raft is filled to capacity, how many people would be aboard the last raft? Well, let's figure out how many people altogether first. 29 adults and 22 children. Okay, and then you're going to divide that by 4 people per raft trip, right? And then figure out how many people are going to be on that last one. That's going to be a remainder is your answer. The remainder will be how many people will be on the last trip. Okay, let's go ahead to 6-9 remembering. Let's go through a couple of these just to remind you what you're doing. Okay, 1 through 6. Remember, 500 times 60, those look like big numbers, but if you take your 5 times your 6 and do that first, and then add the amount of zeros that you have to equal it out. So for that one, 5 times 6 is 30, and then I have 1, 2, 3 zeros. I need to make sure I have those zeros in my product. 7 through 12 is division. Always check division with multiplication. Take your answer times the 7. If you have a remainder, you add that. Add the remainder, and you should get this. Okay? So check your division problems and make sure you have the right answer. Write and solve an equation, solve the problem. If the problem does not have enough information, write the information that's needed to solve the problem. 13. Danny has $14.75. Jason has $22.10, and Trey has $87.45. How much more money does Trey have than the combined amounts of the other two boys? So we have enough information here. But we're going to take Trey, $87.45, and subtract the combined amounts. So we're going to add them together. Okay? And that's going to give us our total of how much more money he has. And obviously our label is money. And 14, stretch your thinking. Write a multi-step word problem in which the remainder is the solution. We had one on the previous page. The remainder was how many people would be on the last trip of the raft ride. Another good example we've done in the past is the leftover bagels, if you remember that problem from earlier on in this lesson, or this unit. So try to think of a word problem, use the examples that you have in your homework, and come up with an interesting word problem, okay? All right, guys, that concludes 6-9. I hope you had a great day, and we will see you tomorrow. Thank you.